Yo guys, what is up? Max for Diablo 4 video, and today we're going over all of the big changes to the Druid for Season 1. Now, the big patch notes just came out. The Druid got new uniques, new aspects. We're going to be talking about the hearts. We're going to be talking about what build is going to be best for Season 1, and also about some of these big nerfs, including a shadow nerf that is absolutely massive to the Druid that was not included in the patch notes anywhere. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let's get right into it. So to start us off, the Druid is getting a new unique, the Flesh Render. This is going to be a one-handed mace, which reads Debilitating Roar and Blood Howl deal damage to nearby poisoned enemies. It's looking like this is probably going to deal around 4k base damage to poisoned enemies, which should be neat. I'm sure there's some neat poison applications that we can use with that. It seems like there's going to be even more emphasis on poison for the Druid this coming season, so we'll have to see how that unique plays out. Next up, the Druid is getting the new Subterranean aspect. Poison Creepers active. Also cast Landslide in a circle around you. Earth skills deal 10 to 20% increased damage to poisoned enemies. This is so cool. I think that Landslide is already the best leveling skill for Druid, with Poison Creeper probably being the best early clear skill for the Druid, and the fact that Poison Creeper will now automatically cast Landslide and we're going to get more damage to poisoned enemies is so synergistic for that. I think Poison Landslide Druid leveling is going to be the way to go, and probably the build that's going to last you until at least level 60 to transition to some of the more late game builds. And obviously this has got big implication for the Trample Slide Druid as well. I think the Druid got a pretty fantastic new aspect, should open up some new build possibilities for that. Next up, they did some fixes. For example, rabies sometimes would deal no damage while standing very close to an enemy. That was really annoying. Sometimes tornadoes produced by the Storm Chaser aspect would not deal damage. Sometimes Ursine Strength was not getting its proc consistently. Just some general changes there. They also, in these fixes, mentioned that Stormclaw's aspect allowed Shred to do extreme amounts of damage, and they fixed that. If you did not know, the Stormclaw aspect was allowing Shred to double dip, or the aspect was double dipping, and usually when you would Shred, you would get a Stormclaw proc for about 4 times the damage that you dealt, which could astronomically scale into the billions. It was pretty insane, and it was allowing Shred to compete with some of the best builds. It was dominating Uber Lilith. It was just really strong. This now works properly. There is no more double dip. It is not grabbing your damage multipliers again. It is correctly dealing the percentage that it says. This is a massive hit to Shred, where Shred is now dealing significantly less damage. It feels much worse to play. Shred went from feeling like one of the absolute best builds that I've experienced in Diablo 4 to one of the worser ones. Now, the one thing I want to note is this does affect the Uber Lilith kill, but it should not gut the Uber Lilith kill. The Stormclaw's aspect, when you were stacking poison, was still dealing, was dealing 100 million damage. Now it should be dealing about 15 to 20 million, which is still gonna be really big hit and still killing bosses, but this absolutely hurts clear speed for kind of quick use of Shred. Shred is going to be even more about stacking poison damage now, instead of relying on Stormclaw's aspect for those quick and really fast massive lightning damage procs. These are the listed Druid changes. However, there was one big unlisted shadow nerf that we're going to be talking about once we get through this. So to start us off, the enhanced claw attack speed is getting increased. They nerfed Storm Strike damage reduction from 25 to 50% or 15%. I feel like that's fine. You could get 25% damage reduction at literally level 2, which was pretty crazy. They're buffing Boulder. They're increasing the spirit we gain from Trample with that enhanced version of it, which is really nice. More spirit from Trample, which I use for leveling. They buffed Cataclysm lightning damage, and the damage that comes from it increased its vulnerable duration, and they increased its total prime Cataclysm duration. So some big buffs to Cataclysm, which is pretty sick. This is a massive nerf. Prime Grizzly Rage now grants Unstoppable for 6 seconds instead of while being active. Currently in a lot of Druid builds, with the aspect to increase the amount of time that you're in Grizzly Rage, you're in Grizzly Rage for upwards of 27 seconds. 27 seconds you are in Grizzly Rage, and now only 6 of those seconds will you actually be unstoppable. This is really bad for the like werewolf version of Grizzly Rage, because the werewolf version of Grizzly Rage, you can only use werewolf skills, and there aren't any werewolf skills that can actually make you unstoppable while you're in Grizzly Rage. I'm not sure what to do about this, because now on my like werewolf builds, aka like any kind of storm builds, lightning builds, tornado builds, and shred, you just can now get CC'd. You cannot cast bulwark while you're in the werewolf version, because werewolf is not a bulwark is not a werewolf skill, and you can't cast trample, which is also would give you unstoppable, because that's also a bear skill. The bear version of Grizzly Rage is fine, but obviously, and not really having any way to stop yourself from getting CC'd in your ultimate skill feels really bad. I thought they were going to nerf Grizzly Rage. I think this was absolutely the incorrect way to nerf it. I would have rather seen them nerf like the crit damage that we were getting from it, or something more along those lines. Just making us be able to be CC'd just doesn't feel good. Next up, they buffed a bunch of the spirit boons. However, they did do a pretty sizable nerf to one of them. Now, they nerfed Masochistic. This now requires a lucky hit chance of 75%. This is worded a little bit weirdly. So the Masochistic boon would give your critical hits a heal. Your like nature magic crits would now heal you for 3%. Now, when you lucky hit, you have a 75% chance to heal. So you need to lucky hit with a critical strike, and then you need to, once you lucky hit with that critical strike, then you have a 75% chance of actually getting healed from that. So that's pretty big nerf to the Druid survivability in terms of like spamming lightning storms and tornadoes to heal you a ton. However, you're probably already building lucky hit on the Druid, and I noticed this still felt pretty good. I was still healing quite a bit. I don't think that's like too drastic of a nerf, but obviously you're not getting the same amount of crazy healing as you were before. Next up in the aspects, one of the big things to note is the symbiotic aspect cooldown reduction was reduced from 4 to 8 to 3 to 5. This affects the Crone Bulwark build, because Crone Bulwark was using this to basically get your Bulwark instantly back, and that's going to be up a little bit less often. However, they did not touch the damage to Bulwark. Bulwark is still going to be doing millions of damage, and probably Druid's still best Nightmare Dungeon pushing build. They didn't make any other mentions of like Bulwark's damage here. And then we get down to our uniques, and they buffed both of the unique chess piece. Both the Insatiable Fury and the Mad Wolf's Glee are going from their skill ranks increase from 2 to 3. However, what's really interesting is if you upgrade these chess pieces all the way, they go from 3 to 4. You are getting a +4 on one of your pieces of gear, which is just an absurd amount of damage for like all of your abilities. So these chess pieces went from like pretty good and not worth wearing for like missing out on the damage reduction that you could have, to being just like kind of a massive damage buff. So really nice there. Now, the big shadow nerf to Druid, which was not mentioned anywhere in the patch notes, I looked multiple times through, is to Envenom. Now, going for +3 on Envenom to your amulets was really the big meta for Druids. And this used to read, you deal 60% X bonus crit damage to poisoned enemies. It was now changed to you and your companions gain 60% plus bonus crit damage. This was changed to a crit damage additive, or was changed from a crit damage multiplier to a crit damage additive, which is not good. The Druid already in Grizzly Rage is stacking up like 1000% crit damage, so getting 60% additive crit damage to 1000 is a whole lot worse than getting 60% more crit damage when you already have 1000. That's obviously a massive difference in damage, so a huge shadow nerf to Envenom. This is still going to be very nice, but I think a lot less important for Grizzly Rage builds now, because it's additive, versus you can still pick up other big damage multipliers, such as Nature's Reach, which gives you increased damage to distant enemies, double for slowed, stunned, immobilized, or knocked back. I could see this being way more important now for the Druid on your amulet versus Envenom, because this is just now an additive multiplier, or an additive thing where we already have so much damage. And lastly for the Druid, we got to talk about hearts. Now, these are the new like corrupted hearts, or the new kind of powers that are going to be available to us in season 1, and there are some really interesting ones for the Druid. To start us off, the Tempting Fate gives us 40 to 60% critical strike damage, but your non-critical strikes deal 20 to 15% less damage. Now, the Druid has the Earth and Might aspect, which gives you guaranteed critical strikes for all of your like abilities, which is really, really nice and gives you infinite energy. And this, if you're proccing it all the time, is just going to give you a big damage multiplier if you're using that like Earth and Might or that Storm Might variation of it, which is really, really neat. And obviously, we can also guarantee ourselves critical strikes with the Waxing Gibbous with Shred. Another really interesting one is when we get down to Creeping Death. Your damage over time effects are increased by 30 to 40% for each different crowd control effect on the target. Unstoppable monsters and staggered bosses take increased damage from your damage over time effects. Shred scaling with poison being even more important could be really, really interesting with this. We've also got the Barber aspect with critical strikes and all subsequent damage is absorbed to your target. Absorbed damage erupts for high crit damage builds, like where we have tornadoes critting a bunch of things and lightning strikes hitting a bunch of things. This could really help with the ad clear of those. And then we have the Druid specific like corrupted hearts. We've got Moonrage. Kills have a 5% chance to summon a wolf companion to your side for 20 to 30 seconds. In addition, gain +3 to wolves. The companion side of Druid has like obviously been the weakest kind of build component. Basically anything that you want to do with Druid has been viable, except maybe companions. And they have made some things to buff companions in the patch notes. Plus, we're also getting some companion specific things, so that should be interesting. Agitated Winds gives us a free cast of Cyclone Armor when enemies are close by. Seems all right. Inexorable Force, up to 30 to 50 distant enemies are pulled towards you while you have an ultimate skill active. This seems really, really interesting for clearing like trash content as fast as possible. I don't think in a high nightmare dungeon you're going to want to pull 50 enemies to you, but the fact that we have that ability to pull a bunch of enemies to us seems really, really interesting for just clearing out content as fast as possible. And then this is really interesting as well. I'm just not sure how well this is going to work. Unconstrained Beast, when you are hit with a stun, freeze, or knockdown effect, there's a 40 to 60% chance to automatically activate Grizzly Rage for 3 seconds. Now, normally I wouldn't care about this that much because Grizzly Rage is up most of the time when you're playing Druid on these Grizzly Rage builds. However, Grizzly Rage only having 6 seconds of Unstoppable is pretty terrible. So the fact that now if we do get hit with the CC, we can basically free proc Grizzly Rage, which I'm assuming if you're in Grizzly Rage would refresh the duration of it and possibly give it Unstoppable. If this refreshes Grizzly Rage and lets us to stay in it longer, or refresh Unstoppable, or keep stacking up our crits, this could be insanely powerful for Grizzly Rage. I'm just not sure how often we're really going to be getting hit with stun, freezes, and knockdowns, and then only having a chance to actually activate it. It will be interesting. Kind of need to play around with that one to see if it's as good as it could be. Guys, that is going to do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed. All in all, I think the Druid did take some nerfs from this, but it doesn't look like the Crone Bulwark build was changed really at all. So that should still be insane for Season 1. The nerfs to Venom and the nerfs to the werewolf form of Grizzly Rage are going to mean that you are a lot less tanky and a lot less survivable in the tornado builds, the lightning builds, the shred builds. Shred is still going to be really good for bossing, but should be pretty nerfed for mobbing. And all in all, I still think there's going to be a lot of build diversity on Shred. I think the Poison Landslide might actually be like a viable or like a super viable like end game setup where it was kind of not as great as some of the other things for super late game. And yeah, guys, that is going to be it for the video. Let me know if you're planning on playing Druid, what class or what build you plan on using. I'll catch you on the next one, guys. Take care. Peace.